Chapter 41. Extremely Dangerous. Haku gently nudged Shinji on the ground. Shinji, wake up. Shinji stirred groggily. What happened to me? Haku avoided his eyes. Maybe you were just tired. You fainted. Is that so? Shinji clutched his stomach and mumbled, maybe I'm just hungry. Seeing that Shinji wasn't going to press the matter, Haku breathed a silent sigh of relief. After that, the two of them went to Ichiraku Ramen and ate a hearty meal. Back at the apartment, Shinji closed the door and listened carefully for sounds from next door. After confirming nothing was amiss, he dropped his disguise and let out a long breath. Of course, the mysterious person who had appeared at the training ground earlier had been his shadow clone. He'd invited Haku in only because he had to. As an Uchiha remnant, Shinji would be a target for anyone who coveted the secrets of the Sharingan. As a lantern bearer, he would be a thorn in the side of whatever force was invading the ninja world. He had to hide his true identity. Even when recruiting a servant, he couldn't reveal himself. If anyone discovered he possessed the Mangekyo Sharingan or that he was a lantern bearer, the consequences would be unimaginable. That necessity narrowed his choices for recruitment. He needed someone with real strength and potential, and someone he could control. With his strange appearance and secretive circumstances, who would be willing to join him otherwise? For his first servant, he'd chosen Haku, a hidden mist spy operating in Konoha. Haku had exceptional talent, able to perform hand signs with one hand at a young age, and the ice-release bloodline limit made his potential enormous. And Haku's identity as a hidden mist operative was the only bargaining chip Shinji had to draw him in. This wasn't the time to be picky. Without leverage, he couldn't recruit any capable people. He'd felt guilty about forcing Haku into this, but if he, the lantern bearer, failed, the ninja world was doomed. In that situation, the people he recruited were not being exploited so much as saving themselves. Sigh, I hope Haku can keep the secret, he thought, uneasy. He wasn't sure whether his outwardly stern threat had been enough. Haku's concern for him earlier had felt unexpectedly sincere. Does he really think of me as a friend? Shinji wondered, shaking his head. Haku had been deliberately close. Shinji's own attitude had been cold, at least according to his own judgment, so he had trouble believing Haku truly considered him a friend. Maybe Haku had only wanted to avoid implicating an innocent person. That was also why Shinji had thrown out the Akatsuki as a smokescreen. If things were exposed and the person he'd recruited outed him, the Akatsuki would misdirect investigations. Besides, as the lantern-bearer's lamp marks spread across the ninja world, stronger and stranger ghosts would keep appearing. Eventually, the lantern-bearer himself might show up. If Shinji and his team eliminated the ghosts under the guise of the Akatsuki, even if their identities were accidentally revealed and the lantern-bearer investigated, the trail would lead only to the Akatsuki. After all, Pain wanted peace for the ninja world too. Surely he would understand. A noise from next door cut through Shinji's thoughts. He listened and realized Haku was slipping out. He frowned. Going out so late, was Haku going to report to his superior? Acting quickly, Shinji bit his finger, formed a hand sign, and summoned Coal Ball. From white smoke, the small head of the summon poked out. What's wrong? Is the cloak I made for you not good enough? It chirped. Shinji sighed. It's not the cloak. I think I messed up. Coal Ball licked his fur. Then it's nothing to do with me. What do you mean nothing to do with you, you mangy cat? Do you still want your pay? Shinji snapped, pointing at Haku slipping past the window. Go follow him. See who he meets and what they talk about. Coal Ball jumped onto the sill. If I get spotted, will I get beaten? No. Oh, then I'm in. Coal Ball pushed through the window. Only as the little paws were halfway out did Shinji add slowly, you won't just get beaten, you'll be silenced. Coal Ball froze, misstepped, and tumbled out of the window, straight into the trees below. Haku reached a tree and tapped gently on the trunk. A shadowy figure materialized on the other side of the tree. A low voice came through the gloom. You're late. Haku lowered his tone. I couldn't get away earlier. Has Konoha become suspicious of you? The figure asked. No, Haku answered. Good. After a pause, the figure continued. How is the mission progressing? Haku hesitated, then said, I think Uchiha Shinji has accepted me. He might already consider me a friend. What makes you think that? He talks to me every day. Haku sounded earnest. The dark figure was silent for a long moment, then hummed in agreement. He is an Uchiha. To earn that level of trust, it seems he truly considers you a friend. Haku nodded. But the village is more concerned about Uchiha Sasuke now, the figure went on. We want you to get close to Sasuke. Sasuke and I aren't classmates. There's no reason for me to get close to him, Haku protested. The figure's voice turned cold. Uchiha Shinji is just an ordinary Uchiha. The true secret of the Uchiha may be hidden within Sasuke. He is the key. You must get close to him. This is not a request, it's an order. Haku felt helpless. But the Uchiha were annihilated. Shinji and Sasuke are both victims. They're innocent. The figure snorted. Innocent? A victim who could subdue the rampaging Ninetales at 7 years old? Even now, you still underestimate the Uchiha. Haven't enough of our hidden mist died because of them? I understand. Haku bowed his head and complied. The dark figure shifted topics. Get close to Sasuke. Find out whether he still has contact with Uchiha Itachi, and investigate whether Sasuke has joined any organization. Haku asked, What organization? The figure's voice dropped. A terrifying organization. We've received intelligence that Biwa Juzo, a former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist who defected, and Uchiha Itachi have both joined it. The village has now listed that organization as extremely dangerous. All information related to it is top priority. Haku realized the gravity of the situation. Biwa Juzo and Uchiha Itachi were both prominent figures. If both had joined the same organization, the thought chilled him. The dark figure continued slowly. The name of that organization is Akatsuki. Haku stared, stunned. Akatsuki! Chapter 42, Second Waiter. Akatsuki Organization? Haku's face went pale with shock. He had only just been forced into this feared Akatsuki organization a short while ago. The shadowy figure repeated in a flat voice, You must report to me immediately all information you gather about the Akatsuki. Everything. Should I report myself? Haku wanted to blurt out that he had already joined, but the words stuck in his throat. The Akatsuki's reputation frightened him. Names like Biwa Juzo, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, and Uchiha Itachi, the man who annihilated his clan, were figures he had never imagined he would stand alongside. He had also been terrified that if he leaked anything about the organization, he could endanger himself, his network of informants, and innocent people like Shinji. Worse, even as a member, he knew almost nothing. He couldn't have given the shadowy figure any useful intelligence. Caught in that inner conflict, Haku stared down at the forest floor. The figure across from him misread the expression for simple overwhelm and, not pushing further, said, That's all for today. Be careful on your way back. Then the shadow melted into the trees and the forest fell silent. Haku let out a long, quiet breath. The day's events had been strange beyond belief. First, he'd been chosen and dragged into the secretive Akatsuki. Then he'd been ordered to investigate it. His head buzzed. At the apartment later, after Coleball's report, Shinji's face was a mask of surprise. He only said that much? Coleball, still busy counting banknotes, replied, That's all. Why didn't he report to his superior? Shinji was baffled. He had already suspected the plan was falling apart when Haku slipped away that evening, and he'd been ready to abandon him as a servant. He hadn't expected Haku to keep the secret. Coleball slipped the counted bills into a bag and, suddenly remembering, added, Oh, right, he approached you on purpose. Be careful. I know. Shinji's expression didn't change. He had noticed Haku's deliberate approach before. Now he understood why. He knew more about what the Hidden Mist had suffered at the hands of the Uchiha than most. It hadn't been the clan as a whole, but Uchiha Madara. Using the Sharingan and his decades of manipulation, Madara had secretly controlled Kirigakure, pulled strings behind wars, and sown internal strife. Even the Three Tails incident during the Third Shinobi War, which led to Rin Nohara's death and drove Obito to madness, had been orchestrated by Madara. For that reason, Kirigakure hated the Uchiha. In the original timeline, the village eventually freed itself under later leadership, but now Kirigakure seemed to have learned what had been done to them and had gone so far as to place Haku inside Konoha to probe the Uchiha. Shinji shrugged the thought away. Hidden Mist's affairs were not his concern. He had enough on his own plate. As long as Haku kept the secret, he could let them worry about their own politics. Coleball watched him for a moment and then padded closer. Shinji noticed the look and asked, "What's up?" "Little Shinji," Coalball began. "Don't call me little," Shinji snapped. Coalball reached out a paw and ruffled Shinji's hair. "Be careful, don't die." Shinji froze, unexpectedly touched. Before he could reply, Coalball added, "My debt isn't paid off yet." Shinji's face darkened. "You care, huh?" Coalball nodded solemnly. "Of course, I don't want to be out of work so soon." Shinji grabbed Coalball by the scruff and hoisted him up. The little creature yelped, "Hey, hey! Your shift isn't over." Ignoring Coalball's squirming, Shinji said, "Come with me. There's another target." A rookie lantern bearer could have two servants. One was done, and Shinji wanted to secure the second. He led Coalball to another apartment building nearby and pointed up to a unit on the second floor. "Hide and stay out of sight. After I leave, watch the tenant. See if she does anything unusual. Come back at dawn." Coalball raised a protesting paw. "I object." No objections. Shinji's figure blurred and he vanished into the night. On the second floor, Karen hugged her knees and curled up on her bed. She had classmates at school, but her special status kept her from forging close friendships. She feared attracting attention. That isolation made her yearn all the more for company. Thinking of Shinji, Haku, and the others who shared similar secrets, she felt a sharp wish to reach out. "I want to be friends with them," she thought. The loneliness of being surrounded yet always alone was hard to bear. A sound on the balcony made her look up. Before she could move, a figure stepped inside. They didn't approach, only leaned casually against the wall and regarded her. Karen tensed. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to sound steady. The intruder wore a mask and a black cloak patterned with red clouds, an Akatsuki cloak. The person was Shinji. He tilted his head, amusement in his voice. "Honestly, I'm curious. What do you want the Ninetails for?" Karen felt as if lightning struck her and stumbled back 2 steps, panic flooding her eyes. Shinji smiled inwardly. "I guessed right." Chapter 43, The Strongest Support. Shinji had already been suspicious of Karen since the fireworks festival. When he later learned that Karen had been with Mizuki the night Naruto was attacked, the pieces began to fit together. Mizuki was Orochimaru's spy planted in the village. There was no doubt about that. Connecting Karen, Mizuki, and the attack on Naruto, it wasn't hard to infer that someone was after the Ninetails. What he couldn't tell was whether they wanted to use the beast's rampage to destroy Konoha, or whether they wanted the Ninetails itself. Seeing Karen's reaction now confirmed his fears. Karen quickly recovered and stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." Shinji gave a soft, humorless chuckle. "Is that so? I think Konoha would be very interested in hearing your side of the story." Panic flashed across Karen's face. "What are you going to do?" "Don't panic." Shinji waved a hand, then after a brief attempt to soothe her, continued, "I'm not interested in the tailed beast, and I don't care about Konoha." "Then what do you want?" she asked, suspicious and trembling. Shinji fixed her with a steady look. "I want you." Karen stumbled back, terror in her eyes. After a nervous cough, Shinji hurried to clarify, "I mean your talent." Relief washed over her. She and her mother had been exploited for their abilities for so long that being used had become almost numbingly familiar. Seeing that relief made Shinji feel an unexpected pang of guilt. He hesitated a long moment before speaking again. "I'll keep your secret and give you protection. In return, you join my organization and work for me." Karen's voice was tentative. "What do you want me to do?" "Simple," Shinji said. "Do what you're good at, healing, sensing." "Only that?" she asked, seeking confirmation. He was blunt. "Yes. No deception here. You lend me your skills, and I keep you safe. That's all." Karen didn't take long to decide. No one had ever treated her with real care. Loyalty to those who only wanted to use her simply wasn't a luxury she could afford. "All right," she said. Shinji smiled. "Our organization is called Akatsuki. We won't interfere with your other activities, and you don't have to report to the organization. There's one rule." "What is it?" "Never leak anything about the organization to anyone." He paused, then added with cold emphasis, "If you break that rule, the consequences will be things you don't want to see." To make his warning tangible, Shinji briefly activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and cast a genjutsu on Karen. Instantly, her eyes unfocused and her expression dulled. He released the genjutsu and said, calmly, "Joining Akatsuki will be good for you." When Karin came out of the genjutsu, shock and recognition mixed on her face. You're from the Uchiha clan? She had reason to be startled. In her mind, very few Uchiha remained. Aside from two known figures, the only other possibility was the infamous Itachi, the S-rank criminal said to have annihilated the Uchiha. The idea that this man before her might be one of them unsettled her even more. Satisfied he'd achieved the desired effect, Shinji left Karin's apartment. Downstairs, a small shadowy figure, Coalball, stepped out from his hiding place. Shinji glanced back up at the apartment, still thinking about the fear he'd seen in Karin's eyes. He murmured to himself, "Did I go a bit too far? Making me stand guard here all night is too much," Coalball complained, nodding vigorously. Shinji shot him a look. "I'm the one who paid you." Coalball huffed and slipped back into the shadows. Shinji didn't linger. He melted into the streets. The mangekyou he'd used wasn't simply to intimidate. It was meant to interfere with Karin's rare sensing ability. Karin's mind's eye of the Kara could mark any chakra, even tens of kilometers away, and identify it precisely. Without interference, she would have exposed him immediately. With his mangekyou active, Shinji overlaid his control of the dojutsu associated with Uchiha Fugaku to scramble her readings, making her misidentify chakra signatures and masking his true identity. He detoured into a secluded grove to deactivate the mangekyou before returning to his apartment. He'd gone to all this trouble because Karin's support capabilities were too valuable to ignore. Not only did she possess the mind's eye of the Kagura, the kind of top-tier sensing skill the ninja world prized, but her chakra could heal in ways few could match. In the original timeline, Karin had dragged Sasuke back from death more than once. Shinji had given her the second servant slot for that reason. With Karin's support combined with Light's enemy-seeking ability, any demon that set foot in the ninja world and crossed him would have little hope of escape. Back at his apartment, Shinji took off his disguise and lay down on the bed, thinking, "Troublesome enemies. I'll deal with them myself." The thought of coaxing and deceiving people left a bitter taste in his mouth. He resolved to shoulder the heaviest fights personally, leaving White to handle containment and Karin to serve as support. A three-person team would be far more versatile than him operating alone. Besides, both White and Karin had great potential. Given time and experience, they could become formidable on their own. Early the next morning, Coalball was still squatting by the bed when Shinji woke. He asked, a little anxious, "How did it go?" Coalball yawned. "She stayed in the room all night. She didn't leave once." Shinji exhaled with relief, but he couldn't let his guard down yet. It had been late when they'd approached her, and even if Karin had wanted to act, the timing might not have been right. He thought for a beat and then said, "Good work, go back and rest." Coalball stretched luxuriously. "Finally, I can rest." Shinji smiled. "You did well last night." Coalball waved a paw as if to dismiss the praise and prepared to summon himself back to Cat Country. Before he vanished, Shinji called out, "Again tonight." Coalball froze, nodded, and melted away. Shinji lay back on the mattress and closed his eyes. Protecting White and Karin would complicate his life, but it was a small price to pay for the advantage their talents would bring. Chapter 44. Compare. With the Chunin exams over, visiting village ninja gradually departed and the Ninja Academy reopened. After washing up, Shinji arrived early at the school. Sitting at his desk, he discreetly watched Haku and Karin. They seemed distracted, but nothing about them was outright strange. The classroom buzzed with talk about the match between Shinji, Neji, and Sasuke to learn the shadow clone technique. A few students kept stealing glances at Shinji. The matter was clearly growing bigger than he had intended. Neji walked in and glanced at Shinji before returning to his seat. The room went a little tenser. "Who do you think will win among the three?" someone asked. "My dad says it's Uchiha Sasuke. He's a Chunin, so his judgment can't be wrong. I say Neji's stronger." Shinji's not weak either. He learned the C-rank fire release, great fireball technique. Shinji listened with a helpless expression. From the start, he had never planned to compete with Neji and Sasuke, those two brats, especially in his current 8-year-old body. But a trivial thing like this had somehow ballooned into everyone's talk, exactly the opposite of what he wanted. "Gossip really is human nature," he muttered, and turned his attention back to Haku and Karin. He still had to save the ninja world. Soon. When the bell rang for dismissal, theory class ended and students dispersed. Shinji called Haku over and they ate bentos together. "You okay today?" he asked casually. Haku shook his head quickly. "I'm fine. Maybe I didn't sleep well last night. I was a bit out of it this morning." "Don't overthink it. Live in the present," Shinji said, then buried his head in his lunch. Haku hesitated, then nodded. A classmate approached Shinji. "Someone's looking for you. They said to come to the small grove behind the school." "Who is it?" Shinji asked. The boy shrugged. "I was just told to tell you. I don't know who. You'll see when you get there." Shinji's eyes flicked to Haku. There wasn't anyone at the academy who would specifically summon him. Had something he did yesterday been discovered? Haku still looked spaced out. He glanced at Karen, who was eating by herself a short distance away. She showed no sign of anything wrong. Strange. Shinji knew the way to the little grove and went quickly. When he arrived, the scene surprised him. Sasuke stood in the middle with one hand in his pocket. Neji had his arms folded. Around them formed a ring of older students, dozens of them. Shinji hadn't expected this. Sasuke's voice was cool. "Hurry up, you're the last one." Before he finished, the surrounding students started shouting, "Hey, you brat, get over here. These little kids are way too arrogant. Heh, today we'll teach them a lesson." Shinji realized then, with a sour feeling, that he'd walked into a bullying scene. Bullying wasn't unknown in Konoha. There had been Uzumaki Kushina back in the day, and more recently, Hyuga Hinata. Both came from notable lineages and were still targeted by brats. Even Uchiha Itachi had once been picked on by older students, a case that had revealed one of his daily school appearances was just a shadow clone. The sight of this happening to him made Shinji part amused, part exasperated. Iruka and Mizuki, both recovered and discharged from the hospital, had rushed toward the grove when they heard about the commotion. They were stopped at the edge by Anbu assigned to protect Sasuke. An Anbu member smiled but said, "Don't worry, nothing will happen." Iruka frowned. "This kind of behavior has to be stopped. They're still children. What if someone gets hurt?" The Anbu looked over and said coldly, "Children, yes, but they're ninja." "Are we just going to stand by and watch?" Iruka asked. "Are you not curious how these three will handle it?" The Anbu replied. "Don't forget, they're not ordinary academy students. They're Uchiha and Hyuga." Inside the grove, the older students provoked the three. "You brats don't show any respect for your seniors. Humph. The rumors made them sound like geniuses. Turns out they're just kids. These brats even supposedly subdued the Ninetales? The village must be mistaken." The group jeered and pushed. Shinji took them in. Most were 11 or 12, about to graduate, 27 or 28 in all. Sasuke glanced at Shinji and Neji. "Shall we make it a contest?" Neji didn't reply verbally, but he activated his Byakugan, clear enough. Shinji felt a hollow turn in his chest. He'd grown through real combat since he'd transmigrated. He wasn't the rookie he'd once been, but many of his fights had relied on Susanoo and raw power rather than technique. His taijutsu was weak compared to the original owners. That owner had been the class's second best taijutsu fighter and still couldn't beat Haku, who ranked in the 20s. Losing was one thing. If someone noticed his taijutsu differed significantly from the originals and got suspicious, that would be dangerous. "You little brat, you looking for death?" One of the taller students snarled and stepped forward, grabbing Sasuke's collar. Sasuke didn't flinch. He activated his Sharingan and turned his head toward Shinji and Neji. "Whoever knocks down more people wins," he said. The older students burst into laughter. "You three want to fight back? Fine, show us what you've got." Shinji sighed inwardly. He couldn't allow himself to lose badly and let others see something off. He had to go all out. In a flash, he moved, whoosh, and lunged at the nearest opponent. First chapter free. Please give recommendation tickets and monthly passes. Chapter 45, I go first. Shinji's move flashed like a signal flare. Almost at the same instant, Sasuke and Neji sprang into action too. From a distance, Iruka stared, incredulous. "How dare they?" he murmured. The Anbu and Mizuki watched with rapt attention. This was clearly a test for the young prodigies. Among the three, Sasuke had the reputation of having stopped the rampaging Ninetales, but the others were no slouches. Uchiha Shinji had mastered C-rank ninjutsu at 8, and Hyuga Neji was the most dazzling young genius in the Hyuga clan in years. Many of the academy instructors had naturally gathered at the forest's edge, lingering silently to see how the melee among students would play out. News of the commotion spread fast. When Shinji and Sasuke's class learned what was happening, the reaction was immediate. "What?" Bai burst up from his seat and sprinted out of the classroom. "Wait for us." Tenten and Rock Lee followed, and within moments over a dozen classmates had poured into the hallway. Even the reclusive Karen hesitated, then joined the rush. They met Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, Hinata, Sakura, and others who had also heard the alarm and were hurrying toward the little forest. Upon learning that their classmate Sasuke was being pressured by a group of older students, no one stayed behind. Their faces set, they ran to help. In the trees, Shinji's mind narrowed to one single goal the moment he moved: knock down as many opponents as possible and not fall behind Neji and Sasuke. He dared not risk arousing suspicion, and without the ability to activate his Mangekyo Sharingan, without that heightened perception, he couldn't afford to split his focus. He had to handle his own attackers. Bang, 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 punch, kick, dodge, strike again. He employed every technique he'd practiced with Bai, amplified by the strength and agility boost from his water-breathing training. His combos were relentless. One by one, the older students trying to block him dropped. When he finally stopped to take stock, the clearing behind him was littered with bodies. A quick glance told him at least 13 or 14 were down. Even he was taken aback by how decisively it had gone. Sasuke, having just felled his second opponent, turned and saw Shinji. His expression hardened. He was in a Sharingan state, with two Tomoe, but hadn't expected to be outpaced by Shinji, who hadn't even activated his eyes. He clenched his jaw. "How is this possible?" he hissed. Neji glared too, both surprised and irritated. Taijutsu was the Hyuga's pride, and so far he'd only taken down 4 opponents. The result stung his pride. He maintained his composure, but burned with the need to prove himself. Sasuke and Neji lunged forward with renewed ferocity, pushing their limits to match Shinji's pace. Outside the forest, the Anbu exchanged looks of astonishment. They'd come wanting to see Sasuke's performance. Instead, Uchiha Shinji, eyes unawakened, had cleared a sizable group with terrifying efficiency. Iruka and Mizuki were equally stunned. They knew these 3 were talented, but had not expected anyone this young to slice through such numbers as if cutting melons. Shinji's taijutsu, especially given his age, felt beyond belief. Shinji, however, felt anything but triumphant. The stares of the older students around him, some of them shaking, some nearly in tears, made him uneasy. He didn't want this kind of attention. He regretted Bai dragging him into this whole situation. He had always measured his taijutsu against Bai and Oni. Against Oni, he relied on his Mangekyo and never had to worry, so Bai had been his only real benchmark, and Bai, who ranked in the 20s of the lower grade class, had always been a tough match for him. That reputation had made him prepare to go all out against a crowd of 11 and 12-year-old seniors. Yet in practice, they'd fought like stunned, unmoving targets. The expected prolonged struggle never materialized. A commotion outside the trees announced the arrival of their classmates, Bai among them. Rushing in, many ready to jump into the fray despite knowing they were outmatched. But when they saw the scene, their faces fell open. Shinji stood alone in the center of the clearing. Over a dozen older students lay scattered at his feet, many unconscious, others groaning. Shinji himself was spotless, not even out of breath. The sight hit them like a shock. Sasuke and Neji still had several opponents each, but they couldn't match the impact of Shinji standing calmly in the center. The gathered classmates forgot to intervene. They simply lined the edge of the clearing and watched in stunned silence. That only made Sasuke more irritable. He glanced at Shinji, who appeared as if he were merely waiting, and his annoyance flared. Neji, too, pushed harder. He unleashed 8 trigrams palms and drove forward with everything he had. Before long, both Sasuke and Neji had dropped 6 or 7 opponents each, leaving one trembling older student still on his feet. "This one's mine," Sasuke snapped. Neji refused to yield. "Why should I?" "Hey!" the last standing older student stammered, bewildered by the sudden rivalry. Shinji had been trying to keep his cool, but with the crowd swelling, Students and teachers alike fixated on him. He couldn't stand being the center of attention any longer. His current position simply didn't tolerate the spotlight. Without looking back, he stepped out of the forest and said casually, "Too slow. I'm leaving first." The onlookers instinctively parted to let him pass, watching as he left the clearing. Chapter 46: Sudden Invasion. Watching Shinji stroll away, Sasuke and Neji ground their teeth. To be so completely outmatched in a field they both considered their strength was intolerable, especially for two students hailed as geniuses. They spun around at the same time, fixing their glare on the only senior student left standing in the arena. "What are you two gonna do? I give up." "Don't kill me," the senior yelped, panic-stricken, and bolted from the grove. He had never seen anything like it and was utterly terrified. With the last senior student gone, only Sasuke and Neji remained standing in the arena. All the other seniors lay scattered on the ground, unconscious or moaning in pain. Despite their victory, Sasuke and Neji wore expressions like defeated men, both secretly shaken by Shinji's taijutsu. Neither wanted to show their fear in front of classmates and teachers. Sasuke shoved his hands back into his pockets. "I was just moving around casually. I didn't expect that Shinji would take things so seriously," he said. Neji had been about to be frank, but hearing Sasuke, he hesitated. "I wasn't trying that hard either," he admitted. They exchanged a look, each catching a flicker of guilt in the other's eyes. The incident, meant to be a bullying show of strength, had turned into a farce, and the other students surged forward to ask questions. Outside the grove, the Ninja Academy teachers wore complicated expressions. They knew better than anyone the massive differences in physical ability, speed, strength, agility, between 7 or 8-year-olds and 11 or 12-year-olds. Under ordinary conditions, even a genius 8-year-old would need many advantages to beat an 11 or 12-year-old. They had seen near sweeps like Shinji's before, but the last student who'd done something comparable had been named Uchiha Itachi. Mizuki let out a wry smile. The Uchiha clan really does produce a lot of geniuses. An Anbu assigned to protect Sasuke nodded. "I didn't expect Uchiha Shinji to be so good at taijutsu, even without activating his Sharingan, his speed." He trailed off. Shinji's speed, amplified by his water-breathing training, had clearly surpassed the level of a normal 8-year-old. The Anbu fell silent mid-sentence. The rest of the implication was obvious. Back in class, Shinji ignored the commotion outside and sat down, propping his chin on his hand and thinking. He realized that, in taijutsu alone, he probably already outclassed typical Ninja Academy students. That meant Haku, who could still suppress him in taijutsu, must be strong enough to sweep through the same students, except Haku hadn't shown that side of himself. In fact, Haku's real strength lay in his exceptional control over ninjutsu. Using one-handed hand seals was not something anyone could do. It meant Haku had very fine chakra control and the potential for chakra nature transformation. That was probably why, at such a young age and without guidance, he had inadvertently manifested ice release. That Haku, forget it. I don't need to worry about being exposed as a taijutsu prodigy anymore, Shinji thought, relieved. But a new worry gnawed at him. His taijutsu might be too dazzling, attracting unwanted attention. He was also becoming aware that waking his Manjikyo Sharingan had steadily increased his chakra reserves. He'd been practicing water breathing diligently and had even used the Susanoo lamp to control a second pair of Manjikyo. On paper, just looking at his current physical stats, he already far outstripped his peers. If he wasn't careful, he could easily display talent far beyond his age and draw the wrong kind of notice. The students drifted back into the classroom. Haku hurried over to Shinji. "Shinji, what you did was incredible. You took down so many seniors by yourself." "Shinji, will you teach me taijutsu?" came requests from all sides. Tenten and Lee joined the chorus, chattering excitedly. Shinji sighed inwardly. Trouble, he thought, had arrived. Neji pushed through the crowd and addressed Shinji directly. "For the next class assessment, I look forward to our match." Shinji glanced at Neji's Byakugan and, for some reason thinking of its upgraded form, the Tenseigan, blurted, "Oh, then you'll have to work hard." Neji froze, then flushed scarlet, but he didn't argue. He simply clenched his fists tighter. Actions, after all, spoke louder than words. Shinji had already proved himself in the fight. Neji resolved quietly to catch up. At that moment, a sound cut through the room. The lamp. "The plane is under invasion," the announcement intoned. Countdown. 1. Shinji's eyes widened. A countdown of only 1 meant the invasion would begin after midnight that night. He had known that once the lamp's mark locked onto a target, it would be easier for the invaders to reach the ninja world, but having only half a day to prepare felt dangerously short. Worse, he had only recruited Haku and Karin as servants yesterday, and hadn't had time to test how reliable they were. If they were forced into action tonight, everything would be rushed. That evening, Shinji returned to his apartment, closed the door gently, and flopped onto his bed. He stared at the ceiling and reminded himself, didn't I recruit Haku and Karin to deal with exactly this kind of demon invasion? There's nothing to hesitate about. Whether it happened a day earlier or later, it was something he had to face. He couldn't judge whether his newly formed team was trustworthy by watching them from the shadows. Only by throwing them into a real fight could he find out. With that in mind, Shinji sat up. I need to let them know to be ready by midnight, he said to himself. As servants chosen by the lantern bearer, Haku and Karin could be teleported by the lamp once it locked onto an invasion site. Shinji had to warn them now, or else they might be ripped onto a battlefield thousands of miles away without any warning. First update. Today is the last day of the month. Classmates who still have monthly votes, don't forget to use them. It would be a shame to waste them. Chapter 47. Dispel the Dawn of Darkness. Oh, what's this? After returning to his apartment from a late-night snack with Shinji, Haku found a note on the table. He picked it up, and his expression immediately grew serious. At the same time, Karin arrived home and saw a note by her bedside. She hesitated for a moment, then read it. Her face changed, and she instinctively glanced at the clock on the wall. In Shinji's apartment, just like before an invasion, he had laid out all his ninja tools on the bed, methodically counting and organizing them into his pouch. He fastened the spider silk, an emblem from his last battle, to his wrist, hiding it within his sleeve. Satisfied, he checked the clock, lay back on the bed, and closed his eyes to rest. The apartment was silent, except for his soft breathing and the precise ticking of the clock. 9, 10, 11. Time crept on until the hour hand finally hit 12. Almost the instant the clock struck 12, Shinji opened his eyes and sat up. There was no hesitation in them. Swiftly forming hand signs, he completed his transformation technique, adjusting his height to that of a normal adult. He slipped into a black cloak patterned with red clouds and pulled on a mask. Invasion area locked. Primary lantern bearer, please prepare to repel the invasion. As he donned the mask, the voice of the lantern echoed in his ears. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the sockets of his eyes glowed with the eerie light of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Let's go, he said. Whoosh. He vanished from the apartment without a sound. Outside, a cold wind howled and scattered dead leaves across the street. Where the leaves swirled, a figure materialized. The sudden appearance sent the leaves tumbling and blending with the soil. Shinji landed on the pile of leaves and scanned his surroundings. Where is this? He muttered. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 more figures appeared beside him. Haku and Karin, the 2 he had recruited as servants, collapsed to the ground, eyes wide with shock. Is this space-time ninjutsu? They breathed. They were still shaking. One moment they'd been in their rooms in Konoha, the next they stood in a suburban area. Space-time ninjutsu was so rare it was almost mythical, something their teachers only mentioned in class. They had never expected to experience it on their first mission, and even more disconcerting, they hadn't noticed the technique being cast. Karin? Haku? They recognized each other and scrambled to their feet. Haku, still bewildered, asked, Did you join the Akatsuki too? Karin timidly nodded. Shinji tossed 2 red cloud cloaks and 2 masks to them without expression. There'll be time to reminisce later. Feeling the weight of his command, Haku and Karin said nothing more and quickly pulled the cloaks and masks on. The garments hung oversized on them. Use the transformation technique, Shinji ordered, then looked toward the dark town ahead. The town was shrouded in night. Demons must have already invaded. Though they didn't understand the full reason for the ritual, Haku and Karin obeyed. They changed their height and build, tightened their cloaks and masks, and fell in line behind Shinji. The aura of the Akatsuki now surrounding them was terrifying. Neither dared to imagine defiance. Once Haku and Karen had steadied, Shinji surveyed the distant town and gave a brief explanation of the demon invasion. Haku's voice shook. "You mean there are demons in the town ahead?" Shinji glanced at Karen. She closed her eyes, activated her mind's eye of the Kagura, and answered, hesitant. "There are many chakra signatures in town, but they're all strange. This is the first time I've sensed chakra like this." Shinji's tone was grave. Demons do not possess chakra naturally. The only way they can have it is by devouring the living creatures of the ninja world, by forcibly stealing their chakra. Haku and Karen pictured that and felt cold dread run down their spines. Shinji continued, "Our job is to eliminate these invading demons and purge them from the ninja world." Haku blinked. "Excuse me, is exterminating these demons really the Akatsuki's mission?" "Yes," Shinji said, his voice deep and resolute. "We are the dawn that dispels the darkness." Haku and Karen exchanged looks. The thought that the organization existed to protect the ninja world softened the resentment and fear they'd felt about being forced into it, replacing it with something like resolve. As they moved toward the town, Shinji outlined their roles. "At night, you won't be able to kill most demons. I'll handle the fighting. Your job is to cover and assist me. Understood?" "Understood," they answered, nodding. Before they entered the town, Shinji also briefly explained the 12 Kazuki. A demon's eyes are the easiest way to judge its strength. If a lower moon demon hasn't acquired chakra, it's probably at the Chunin level, maybe a bit higher. But if it has chakra, treat it like a Jonin level opponent. Don't be careless. Haku asked quickly, "What about upper moon demons?" Shinji shook his head. "I haven't encountered an upper moon yet." They slipped into the town. It was unnervingly quiet. Houses were dark and lifeless under the cold silver of the gecko moon. Shinji gave Karen a look. She steadied herself, engaged her mind's eye of the Kagura, and pointed toward a corner nearby in a whisper. "The strongest chakra is just ahead." Shinji nodded. "Haku, protect Karen." "Yes." Haku took out a kunai and moved to shield her. They were about to advance when a figure stepped out from the shadowed corner. It saw them and slowly spread its arms. "I can smell your scent from so far away," it said with a slow, hungry smile. "What delicious lambs you are. Be good now. Go to sleep." Second update is here. The third update will follow shortly. Please wait. Chapter 48, Dreamland, third update. Lower Moon 1, Enmu. Shinji's eyes narrowed at once. Though the enemy hid in shadow, the insight of his Mangekyo Sharingan let him make out the figure and recognize him. "Be careful," he warned Haku and Karen behind him. Seeing their leader tense, Haku and Karen snapped to attention. From the darkness, Enmu stepped forward with outstretched arms and a rictus of madness on his face. "I can't wait to devour you all. Now, sleep." As he spoke, ripples spread through the air and raced toward Shinji. Not good, Shinji thought. The instant the blurring waves struck, he fully activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. The ripples passed through him and faded into the night. He checked himself, no injury, and then reached to check Haku and Karen, only to find they were gone. "How is this possible?" he blurted. He was baffled. With his Mangekyo activated, Haku and Karen couldn't simply vanish from beside him. Then the realization hit, and he glanced sharply at the lower moon opposite him. Enmu gave a small exclamation as well. Shinji stared, incredulous. "I've been pulled into your dream? Why are you the only one who came into the dream?" And Enmu looked at his own hands, puzzled. "Why did I come in too?" Shinji frowned. From Enmu's words, it clicked. Haku and Karen hadn't vanished. Their blood demon art had dragged only Shinji into a dreamscape. Fortunately, he'd activated his Mangekyo in time and resisted the full effect, which allowed Haku and Karen in reality to escape unscathed. Enmu, too, seemed surprised. He took a few steps closer, staring at Shinji. "Is it your eyes? Did your dujutsu pull me into my own dream?" Shinji's expression changed when he could finally see the characters in Enmu's eyes. Contrary to his memory, the pupil of Enmu's left eye was not engraved with lower 1, but lower 5. How could he be lower moon 5? Shinji didn't misremember. Enmu had been lower moon 1, one of the strongest lower moon demons. Rui, who had been lower 5 before, must have been replaced as well. The rankings among the lower moons had shifted. This demon world was not what Shinji remembered. Realization sparked urgency. He reached to release Amaterasu, but no matter how he channeled his jujutsu, the black flames wouldn't form. Anmu laughed, a little hysterically. No one knows dreams better than I do. Here we're all fragile, easily broken. Have my abilities been suppressed in the dream? Shinji wondered, disquieted. If so, neither he nor Anmu could harm the other here. At least Haku and Karin were unaffected. With Haku's speed and wit, Shinji hoped they'd notice the abnormality and wake him. Then, without warning, Shinji spat blood. He looked down and saw a shallow depression in his chest, as if struck hard. Anmu smiled. Even outside the dream, you're not the only one with companions. Injuries you take in reality will show up here in the dream. Outside the dream, Haku shouted as he fought off demons. Karin, get the leader away, now! Okay, Karin cried. She hoisted the unconscious Shinji onto her back and darted down an alley. Everything had happened too fast. The mysterious demon had appeared and fallen unconscious along with their leader. Then several other demons had poured out of the shadows. One of them had taken advantage of the chaos and ambushed the leader, grievously wounding him. If Haku hadn't blocked the follow-up attacks, both the leader and she might be dead. Karin clutched what was left of her composure. They'd been in the Konoha apartment not long ago. Now they were fleeing for their lives with their leader inexplicably down. Tears threatened. We can't let those demons catch us, she whispered to herself and kept running. Haku, meanwhile, held the line. Apart from the strange fallen demon who'd collapsed with the leader, 4 other demons remained to fight him. They were odd. 2 had lower 5 engraved in their eyes, and 2 had lower 6, but each engraving had a heavy cross through it. According to the leader's report, these should be lower moon demons of the 12 Kazuki, but why were there 2 lower 5s and 2 lower 6s? Could there be multiples of the same rank? What did the crossed-out marks mean? Unqualified. Haku's thoughts raced. One demon licked blood from its fangs and sneered, "You must be the so-called ninja of this world." Haku stared at the gore stuck between the creature's teeth. "Have you eaten people?" he asked. "Don't worry, you'll be in my belly soon too," it grinned. Fear hardened into resolve. Haku had joined the Akatsuki only yesterday and hadn't expected to face literal monsters so soon, but seeing them devour people crystallized what the organization stood for. He would not back down. Forming seals fast, he called out, "Ice release secret art, demonic mirror ice crystals." Icy mirrors sprang into being, forming a semicircle that trapped Haku and the 4 demons. He then retreated into one of the mirrors and compacted himself there. "I can't kill you from here," he said through gritted teeth, "but I'll hold on until dawn." On another street, Karin took a longer route with the injured leader and spotted a house with a faint candle in the window. She rushed inside and called, "Is anyone there?" Footsteps answered from deep within. Karin's relief faded when she saw a demon approaching, his torso studded with several drums, walking slowly toward her. Back in the dream, Shinji removed his mask and wiped blood from the corner of his mouth, laughing softly. "Looks like they stopped. I thought they'd just kill me outright." Inmu was a little surprised. He'd expected Shinji's allies in reality to have finished him, yet after one blow, there had been no follow-up. "I messed up," Shinji muttered. "How could I let those 2 rookies be put in such danger?" He shook his head, then fixed Enmu with a look. "Hey, aren't you curious about my eyes? Then take a good look." Chapter 49, Pupil Technique. Is it such an inconvenience? As Shinji finished speaking, his Mangekyo Sharingan flared with an eerie light. "Your eyes." Onmu faltered. The madness on his face faded into wary caution. He didn't know what Shinji's red eyes meant, but as a demon skilled in manipulating minds, he instinctively sensed danger. Shinji smiled faintly. In a dream, he truly couldn't use ordinary ninjutsu, but a dream connected to the spirit world fell within the domain of the Mangekyo. He wasn't particularly strong at genjutsu. If an Uchiha like Itachi or Shisui, who specialized in weaving illusions, had faced Enmu, they might have found a way to break the blood demon art long ago. Still, Shinji had begun to grasp a trick. He looked around at the street scene, so similar to reality, and said, amused, "Not bad, but it's lacking a bit of atmosphere." He snapped his fingers. The silver moon hanging high in the night sky warped, taking on the shape of a Mangekyo Sharingan, and its pale light shifted to a deep, blood-red glow. "How is this possible?" Enmu cried, stunned. He had never seen anyone alter his dream before. Shinji turned his gaze from the sky to the demon and said coldly, "Eye techniques, how inconvenient they can be." A strange black flame erupted across Enmu's body. "What is this?" "Ah!" the demon screamed. His agony rippled through the dreamscape, and in reality, Karen's heart leapt into her throat. Outside the dream, the drum demon, several drums embedded in his body, moved toward her. Karen instinctively backed away, clutching unconscious Shinji on her back. Even in her terror, she hadn't abandoned him. The drum demon sniffed, then grinned broadly. "I taste power in your blood. If I eat you, I'll grow stronger." Goosebumps rose along Karen's arms. She pushed at the courtyard door, but it opened not onto the familiar garden, but into a strange, unfamiliar room. The drum demon struck a drum and advanced. Karen's fear doubled. This demon could manipulate space. Among the ninjas she knew, only the fourth Hokage had demonstrated space manipulation on that scale. To Karen, space twisting was the mark of a powerful shinobi, something a chubby, terrified academy student could never contend with. She ran blindly through the mansion with Shinji on her back, riffling through corridors and rooms as the layout shifted around her. The halls twisted like a labyrinth. She could not find the exit. Soon she exhausted herself and collapsed to the floor, Shinji still across her back. The drum demon followed slowly, amused. "Run faster. Why have you stopped?" Karen dragged herself into a corner and curled over Shinji. The demon licked his lips and made a strange, gurgling laugh. Despair closed in. She was only 7. She didn't know how to react to this. "It's over. They're going to eat me," she whispered, hands clamped over her ears. The demon loomed over her. "I love the look of despair on my prey. Despair tastes the best." Droplets of saliva plinked onto the floor. Karen squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the pain. "Maybe if I die, I'll finally be free." Boom! The expected agony never came. Instead, a deaf roar filled the air. Karen peered open-eyed and saw that Shinji, who had been in a deep sleep, had somehow stood up. A yellow-orange chakra projection had erupted from his body and formed a gigantic skeletal arm that smashed the drum demon into the wall. Relief flooded Karen. "Lord." Shinji waved a hand lazily. "Sorry," I nodded off. Tears sprang into Karen's eyes. "I'm so glad you're awake." Shinji turned his gaze to the demon pinned in the rubble. "Leave the next fight to me." The drum demon crawled free and snarled, "I'll devour you." Karen's voice shot up. "Lord, be careful. He manipulates space by beating his drums. All the rooms in this mansion are under his control." Shinji gave a half smile. "No matter how you twist it, it's still just a mansion." A roar answered him. The skeletal arm of chakra condensed, and the Susanoo that had first appeared as a single phantom limb expanded violently, materializing into an armored half-bodied giant. With a rumble, it broke through beams, burst through the roof, and blew the mansion apart from within. Standing on the rubble, the drum demon stared at the godlike figure in disbelief. "You, who are you?" Karen, standing beside Shinji, could only stare. Shinji asked quietly, "Where's Haku?" Karen scrambled to her feet. "He covered me. He held back several demons by himself. I don't know how he's doing now." Shinji's expression darkened. He didn't speak further. The Susanoo seized the drum demon and squeezed. Crack. The demon was crushed into fragments under the giant's grip. A ball of black flame drifted from Shinji's eye and flowed over the broken pieces, burning them cleanly to ash. It took only a few breaths. Karen stood frozen. She had never seen the demon's famed regeneration in action, and now it had been reduced to nothing. With her keen senses, she realized the black flame wasn't ordinary fire release. It behaved differently, something more absolute. Shinji lowered his head and coughed twice, bringing up blood. Karen hurried forward, alarmed. "Lord, let me heal you." Without ceremony, Shinji peeled back part of his mask and bit into Karen's forearm. Earlier, when Enmu had dragged him into the dream, several ribs had been broken by the demon's sneak attack. He was badly injured. Even keeping Susanoo and unleashing the black flame had cost him. The bite drew Karen's healing blood, healed by the one he protected, and his color returned a little. He rose without resting and tucked Karen under his arm. "Which way is Haku?" Karen closed her eyes and reached out with her senses for a moment, then pointed into the distance. Chapter 50. Harvest. Inside the demonic mirror, ice crystals glittered. Bang, bang, bang. 4 demons lashed at the ice mirrors that imprisoned them. But no matter how they struck, they couldn't shatter the panes in a single blow. At best, they left one or two cracks that were immediately mended by Haku, who hid within the glassy prison. Damn it! That cursed ninja! When we catch him, we won't let him die easily. The demons cursed in fury. They could regenerate flesh and bone endlessly, but their strength had limits, and they couldn't shake the bone-deep cold radiating from the mirrors. They did not know that the unassuming ice was actually a bloodline limit, the fusion of water and wind chakra, far beyond ordinary single-nature ninjutsu. Haku, though concealed in the mirrors, was anything but relaxed. The demons trapped outside did not tire and did not fear injury. Even if their arms broke while striking the ice, they regenerated quickly. Haku had to constantly expend chakra to repair the mirrors. He glanced at the dark sky. Dawn was still 6 or 7 hours away, and his face tightened. He doubted whether he could hold out until sunrise. One demon snarled, smelling weakness. "How much longer can you last? I can smell your fear. You're already terrified." Haku replied calmly, "Even if I die, I won't let any of you leave here alive." One of the demons, characters for lower 5 carved into its eyes, turned to the others. "Give me some chakra. I'll use my blood demon art to break his ice." The other 3 hesitated, but had no better plan. They allowed the demon to devour portions of their bodies. Haku looked on in disgust as the ravenous creature fed. The devouring swelled the demon's chakra until it roared, "Blood demon art! Ghost shadow!" It blurred into an afterimage and struck the ice with lightning speed. Crack! Several fissures spidered across one mirror. Haku stopped conserving chakra and formed hand signs, reforging the shattered pane at once. The 3 remaining demons urged on their comrade, "Hurry and break those ice pieces. This lord is hungry." The empowered demon sneered, "Don't worry, I'll finish this ninja." Demons did not need to worry about chakra the way humans did. Eating enough humans replenished them easily. The demon poured chakra into its blood demon art and slammed the mirrors again and again. Under the relentless barrage, more and more mirrors were damaged, and Haku, only 8 or 9 years old, couldn't maintain the repairs. His chakra drained rapidly. Boom! The damaged mirrors reached a tipping point, setting off a chain reaction that shattered the entire ice dome. When the dome finally collapsed, the 4 demons grinned savagely until the surrounding shards and the cold mist cleared and froze the smiles on their faces. Beyond the broken ice stood a gigantic yellow half-body Susanoo. Lord, beneath the yellow Susanoo stood Shinji and Karen. Haku, who had fallen to the ground, went from despair to astonished relief. "Well done." Shinji nodded at him, activated his Susanoo, and seized the demon that had devoured its comrades. He looked at the other 3. "Ah!" Black flames enveloped them instantly. Screams choked off into ash. The demon in Shinji's grip went pale. What kind of black flame is that?" Shinji ignored the question. He cast a genjutsu and interrogated, "Why did you invade the ninja world? What's your purpose?" Faced with Shinji's Mangekyo Sharingan, the demon dropped its resistance and blankly began to answer. "We came here for..." Bang! Mid-sentence, the demon exploded without warning. Its corpse turned to ash and did not regenerate, just like being struck through by a Nichiren blade. Shinji frowned. That outcome confirmed his suspicions. He had suspected these invading demons might have been tampered with by the mysterious lantern-bearer, and that interrogation might be futile. The exploded demon didn't recover. The mind seemed to be shut off, irreversibly destroyed. Shinji glanced toward where Enmu had been and found nothing. "Where is that demon?" he asked Haku. Still shell-shocked, Haku answered, "A moment ago, it just turned to ash and disappeared, just like that one." Shinji's expression grew wry. In the dream earlier, he hadn't actually activated Amaterasu. Ninjutsu doesn't work in dreams. He'd only used his Mangekyo to simulate activating Amaterasu in the illusion. He hadn't expected Enmu, a demon who manipulated dreams, to be scared to death by an illusion within the very dream Enmu controlled. Damage inflicted in a dream could reflect back into reality. Conversely, mental trauma experienced in a dream could manifest in the real world. Enmu had essentially frightened himself to death. "Counting the drum demon, that makes 6 who attacked the ninja world this time," Shinji muttered. After a beat, he told Karen, "Sense if there are any others in the village." Karen, steadied by the ordeal, activated the mind's eye of the Kagura. "I'm not sensing any more," she reported. Invasion successfully, rift closing. The lantern-bearer's voice confirmed the result in Shinji's ear. He let out a long breath. The confrontation had been dangerous, and his newly formed team had nearly been wiped out. Scanning for spoils of war. Spoils of war analyzing. Spoils of war, dream construction. Spoils of war, little drum, alters the spatial layout of buildings. Spoils of war, speed, ninjutsu converted from a blood demon art. Glowing orbs coalesced before them, drawn by the lantern-bearer. Shinji smiled. A fine harvest. Second update is here. Comments seem to have recovered. Please continue to vote, recommend, and support with monthly passes. Chapter 51. Stress won't go away. Haku and Karen noticed the faintly glowing orb around Shinji at the same time and stared in surprise. Shinji, however, was lost in thought. This dream construction was clearly Unmu's ability, and dreams belonged to the spiritual realm, which matched well with his Mangekyo Sharingan. Genjutsu had always been a weakness of his because of a lack of guidance. With dream construction, he could finally make up for that gap. He had no hesitation about keeping that prize for himself. The real dilemma was the other two spoils, the little drum and the thing called speed. The drum was a physical object. If he carried it, his identity could be exposed. It would be better, he decided, to pass it to Haku or Karen. Speed was similar. If he used it openly at the academy, Haku and Karen might recognize him. The drum can only be used indoors, and its utility is limited, Shinji thought. But it can save a life in a pinch. Karen should carry it for protection. Speed should go to Haku. His taijutsu is already strong. This will make it even deadlier. Having decided, Shinji took the dream construction orb for himself, then told Haku and Karen, "One for each of you. Haku takes the left one, Karen the right." Haku mirrored Shinji and reached for the orb. He paused, then a look of pleasant surprise crossed his face. Karen grabbed the right orb and felt it change in her hand into a palm-sized drum. Huh, isn't this the drum from that demon? Only smaller. It was clearly the same kind of drum the drum demon had used, only reduced in size. Shinji finished absorbing the memory fragments of dream construction and felt a surge of relief. As he expected, Enmu had experience crafting dreams, and that experience could teach him the structure of genjutsu. Improvement would still take time and practice, but now he wouldn't be groping in the dark. He looked at Haku and Karen, who both wore expressions of joy. They understood the purpose of the spoils. Shinji's voice turned serious. "There's one more rule you must remember." "Tell us," they said at once, mirroring his tone. "Anything related to demons, their items, information, even memories lodged in people's minds, is dangerous to the ninja world," Shinji said slowly. "What?" Haku and Karen jumped back, and Karen nearly dropped the drum. Shinji didn't soften his tone. "No information about demons can be leaked. All spoils taken from demons are for personal use only and must never be spread." Karen swallowed and asked, "What happens if it leaks accidentally?" Shinji glanced at her. "If those items and pieces of information that don't belong in our world get out, they'll act like anchors. They'll link the ninja world to the demon's world. That contamination will spread, pulling the two worlds together." "And then what?" Karen asked, voice trembling. "Then both worlds head toward destruction." Saying it made Shinji feel lighter, as if he'd unburdened himself. Karen still looked puzzled. "If that's true, why do demons invade our world? Wouldn't their world be in danger too?" Haku's eyes sharpened with understanding. "Is that why you used genjutsu on that demon earlier?" Shinji nodded. "Honestly, I still don't know why the demons invade." The three of them fell quiet. The mood grew heavy. Shinji thought, "Sure enough, pressure doesn't disappear. It only moves somewhere else." Haku's voice wavered with worry. "Sir, will the information in our minds endanger the ninja world?" Karen glanced at him nervously. Shinji shook his head. "Don't worry. We're the exception. We can contain this contamination within ourselves. But if your spoils of war are leaked or passed on, the contamination spreads." Karen hugged the little drum to her chest. Shinji met her gaze. "Keep it with you at all times." "Yes," she said, nodding earnestly. She liked the drum. The thought of controlling space appealed to her, but she hadn't known how dangerous it was. Fortunately, it was small, mundane in appearance, and didn't give off any chakra signature. It wouldn't draw attention if she carried it. "Remember what I said," Shinji said. "Memories of demons are pollution. now split up and gather the survivors in town. Haku and Karen understood the gravity of his warning and moved without argument. The town was small. After being ravaged by 6 demons, only a little over 100 people remained. Thanks to Enmu's dream trap, all of them had been immobilized in dream states, so Shinji and the others had little trouble finding and collecting them. They spread out along the main street. Bodies and unconscious survivors lay where they'd fallen. Haku's voice trembled. "Sir, what do we do with these people?" Karen turned her head away, unable to watch. If demon memories were pollution, the simplest solution would have been to eliminate every survivor who had been touched by them. Seeing their fearful expressions, Shinji cut in, cold and matter-of-fact. "Where did you get that idea? If demons can leave memories in people's minds, I can take those memories away." He activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. In an instant, Shinji dove into the dreams of the survivors. With the Dujutsu's Genjutsu, he sealed the demon-related memories in each person's inner spirit one by one, then implanted a false memory that the town had suffered a fire that night. When he withdrew, he covered his eyes and gasped. Sealing hundreds of people's memories and replacing them with a fabricated event was an enormous strain, even on a Mangekyo Sharingan, but it let him avoid killing innocents. That alone made it worth the cost. Haku and Karen watched him warily. "Are you all right?" they asked. Their fear and disgust at being forced into a secret organization had shifted into dependence and trust. Shinji waved them off. "Prepare to cover everything up." He pointed to several spots and directed Haku and Karen to start fires that would create a blaze matching the false memory he'd implanted. The many deaths hidden in the dream demons' bellies needed a plausible explanation to keep the genjutsu intact. A fire would do the job. Haku and Karen moved quickly. Before long, the town, shrouded in darkness, was engulfed in towering flames. Reward settlement in progress. A voice called in Shinji's ear, the familiar tone of lamp. "The first update is in. Keep asking for recommendation tickets and monthly passes. The new book has already passed 100,000 characters. If you can follow along, try flipping to the last page. And if you're reading this paragraph, it looks like you already did." Chapter 52. Unexpected Encounter. Rating, a permissions elevated. Ninja World gift options increased to 3. Obtained Ninja World gifts. Chakra, small amount. Natural energy affinity, trace amount. A-rank ninjutsu, random. Please select one. Achieve A-rank evaluation to forgo Ninja World gifts and receive a random reward. The lantern's voice echoed slowly in Shinji's ear. After listening, he wondered, is this another A-rank evaluation? He had cleared out the demons quickly this time. Most of the town's casualties had occurred before he arrived. Under normal circumstances, A rank seemed the highest likely evaluation. Higher ratings, he figured, would require intercepting invaders before they reached the ninja world, eliminating them the instant they invaded, or taking down much stronger, more prominent foes. He considered the 3 Ninja World gift options. He dismissed chakra for now. He wasn't lacking in ordinary chakra. What he needed was high-quality yin-release chakra. He couldn't refine himself. A random A-rank ninjutsu wasn't necessary either. His current kaleidoscope eye techniques could handle a wide range of situations. What he truly lacked was deeper development of his own eye techniques. Of the 3 options, only natural energy affinity really caught his attention. This natural energy affinity should counteract the erosion of natural energy on my body and increase my odds of cultivating Sage Mode, he thought. In the ninja world, mastery of Sage Mode was traceable. The stronger the body's endurance and the more chakra available to dilute the corrosive effects of natural energy, the greater the chance of success, examples being the first Hokage and Naruto. So the gift's natural energy affinity was tempting. Still, after weighing the long-term against the immediate, Shinji chose to forgo the Ninja World gift and draw a random reward. Elevating his permissions felt more fundamental. Higher permissions would make future rewards more plentiful. Chasing short-term gains while neglecting permission growth could be disastrous if he ever crossed paths with that mysterious lantern bearer again and lacked sufficient permissions. I choose to forgo the Ninja World gift. Random reward generating. Obtained merit points, 25 points. Total merit points calculating. Total merit points, 46 points. He hadn't expected to draw 25 merit points. The random rewards weren't fixed. Adding the 5 points for an A-rank evaluation meant he had gained 30 merit points at once. At this rate, 2 more times, and he could elevate his permissions again. Nearby, Haku and Karen had just finished putting out a large, deliberately set fire, making the scene look like an accident. The town had nearly burned down, the residents had barely extinguished it, and then been overcome by smoke. Shinji scanned the area, confirmed there were no oversights, and prepared to leave. Then Karen hesitated. "My lord, What's wrong?" Shinji asked. Karen pointed toward a dense forest. "There's a hidden chakra over there. I'm not sure if it's a demon." "What?" Shinji frowned and peered into the trees. Even with his Mangekyo Sharingan, he could only make out layers of shadow. Haku, tense, asked, "Karen, are you sure?" Karen shook her head. "I can't be sure. The chakra is intermittent. It feels a little like a demon, and a little not. Let's go check it out." Shinji leaped toward the direction Karen had indicated. He wouldn't assume all the demons were gone just because the lantern's reward settlement had finished. Other lantern bearers might be involved. With his low permissions, his lantern could be interfered with by someone else. That was why he had chosen Karen, holder of the mind's eye of the Kagura, when selecting servants. The perceptions of the lantern and Karen needed to verify each other. Neither was necessarily definitive. The three of them pushed deeper into the forest. Following Karen's intermittent sensing, they adjusted course several times and finally arrived before a dilapidated temple. Shinji studied the building and asked, "Is it inside?" Karen frowned, unable to give a clear answer. Haku, having circled the temple, returned quickly. "My lord, there's candlelight inside." "Stay behind me." Shinji led the way into the temple. As soon as he stepped into the main hall, he stopped, his expression shifting. Haku and Karen froze behind him and turned to see a yellow-haired young man sitting cross-legged in the center. The young man noticed them and sized them up. "Hey, you three dressed like rogue ninja. Who are you?" Shinji's brain clicked. The yellow-haired young man was Deidara, Tsuchikage's prized disciple and brilliant rebel. He hadn't expected to find Deidara here. Now, Deidara hadn't joined Akatsuki yet in this timeline. Putting the scene together, Shinji realized why Deidara was here and alone in a temple. Itachi's recruitment of Deidara in the original timeline had occurred inside a temple, and Itachi was likely on his way to recruit him soon, maybe even within a day or two. Deidara couldn't stay hidden in a deserted temple forever. Deidara's lips curled as if amused, and he plunged his hands into the clay pouches at his waist. "What are you doing here at night? Wearing masks and all. Are you old men come to drag me back?" Shinji stiffened. Their disguise as Akatsuki members had already been seen by Deidara. If they retreated now, Akatsuki would know someone was impersonating them once Deidara joined, and then they'd be hunted across the ninja world. Their plan to use Akatsuki as a shield would be ruined. Deidara produced 2 lumps of explosive clay. "I've got an idea. Let me show you my art." Shinji knew there was no peaceful resolution. He stepped forward and said, flatly, "Deidara, I'm here to invite you to join us." Deidara frowned. "Who are you?" "Akatsuki." Chapter 53, Insider, Akatsuki? Never heard of them. A ragtag band of rogue ninja won't trouble me. Let me show you what real art is. Deidara declared, molding a lump of explosive clay between his hands. In an instant, he shaped a lifelike clay spider. "How boring." Shinji paused, then added, "If I win, you'll join us." "You dare insult my art." Deidara snapped and flung the clay spider. Boom. The explosion engulfed Shinji and the 2 others. The main hall shuddered and collapsed midway. Deidara stood amid the rubble, laughing. "With this kind of power, you dare belittle my art? What a ridiculous organization." A cool, disembodied voice cut through his triumphant roar. "Is that your art? Truly boring." Deidara froze as if struck by lightning, eyes scanning the ruined hall. Despite being only 12, barely old enough to have graduated the Ninja Academy, his strength had already rivaled a Jonin's. In pure destructive power and mobility, he outmatched many elite Jonin. Something was wrong. Bewilderment creased his face. A genjutsu? Shinji appeared before him, as if from nowhere. As Deidara watched, the blasted hall rebuilt itself brick by brick, the hole closing, the dust vanishing. In the blink of an eye, everything looked untouched, as if the explosion had never happened. Convinced he had been trapped in an illusion, Deidara's surprise turned to uncertainty. When was I caught? The moment you looked into these eyes, Shinji said calmly, you lost. Deidara's gaze dropped to the crimson dojutsu glowing beneath Shinji's mask. Realization hit. Sharingan? You're Uchiha? The revelation was interrupted by another flash of light behind Shinji, so dazzling Deidara had to shield his eyes. Shinji continued, your art isn't even worth mentioning. Want to know what true brilliance is? Join us. He intensified the dojutsu. The explosive clay in Deidara's hands disintegrated into dust. The clay in his pouch vanished too. Deidara stared in disbelief. Explosions were his creed, his way of life. Yet before Shinji's Sharingan, his proud creations were trivial, erased and restored at will. He could not control the clay in his own hands. Even his convictions and aesthetic beliefs felt mocked. Could this be art? No, there can't be anything more brilliant than an explosion. Damn it. Seeing Deidara falter, Shinji added, only by joining us will you see greater things. All right. Reluctantly, Deidara accepted. He nodded, and for a moment the world tilted. When he recovered, the temple was unchanged. The three people who had stood before Shinji were where they'd always been, and the clay spider he had thrown and blamed for destroying the hall was still clutched in his hand. It was as if everything before had been a dream. This time, however, Deidara looked at Shinji and the red cloud cloak with a new sense of awe. There was a strange, compelling artistry to them now. From now on, Shinji said, you're an inner circle member of our Akatsuki. Inner circle? Deidara blinked. Haku and Karin behind Shinji exchanged surprised looks as well. Shinji went on. Outer circle recruiters will come for you later. You will join them and watch their movements. Deidara scowled. I don't want to be stuck with nobodies. They're not nobodies, Shinji said, unruffled. The outer circle aren't the strongest, but you'll change your mind when you've spent time with them. Humph. Deidara huffed, irritated. Some outer circle members have been acting strange, Shinji warned. While you're undercover, be careful not to reveal your inner circle. How will I contact you? Deidara asked. Don't worry, I'll contact you, Shinji replied offhandedly. Deidara sat back down, eyes flicking to Shinji now and then. Shinji dismissed him and led Haku and Karin out of the main hall. Once they reached a secluded spot, Haku began, My lord, just now. Shinji cut him off with a shake of his head. Haku fell silent. Shinji turned to Karin. Was that the chakra you sensed earlier? Karin shook her head. I'm not sure. The feeling's gone now. Shinji frowned. The trail had vanished. The longer they lingered, the higher the chance the arriving Akatsuki recruiters would appear. If things went wrong, they could be wiped out. Karin, guilt-ridden, said, My lord, I'm sorry. Maybe I misread it. It's happened before. Shinji waved her concern away. You're only 7. Mistakes are normal. Don't worry. Karin relaxed a bit. Shinji glanced at the sky. We've stayed too long. Let's go. They couldn't afford to be away from their apartment for long. With 2 of them possessing Kekkei Genkai and 1 a sage body, they were high-priority targets. An unexpected ambu patrol was always a possibility. With that, the 3 vanished into the forest. Not far away, hidden in the grass, a dark figure peered out, his gaunt face pale with terror. They can track chakra, he whispered hoarsely. It cost me half my flesh and the chakra I stole. I nearly got caught. He stared at the temple, thinking rapidly. The Akatsuki is Lord Lantern, who governs this domain, their leader. I must report this back. After returning to his apartment, Shinji immediately deactivated his Mangekyo Sharingan. He endured the ache behind his eyes, stowed his mask and the crimson cloud cloak, then took a long, hot shower to wash away the smells clinging to him before collapsing onto the bed. It's starting again. This time the discomfort in his eyes lingered. It wasn't the same sharp, stabbing pain as before, but the dull, nagging ache was a clear reminder. His dojutsu was severely depleted. He let out a soft sigh. Since he'd transmigrated, he had pushed himself without pause, studying, cultivating, never idle. But his body was still 8 years old, and his basic strength was limited. Against demons wielding all kinds of strange blood demon arts, he had to rely on the power of his Mangekyo Sharingan. There was no other choice. Each invasion forced him to use his kaleidoscope eye techniques repeatedly. Tonight, he'd even used Susanoo and Amaterasu in succession. Decisive, but brutally taxing. He'd also sealed the memories of over 100 survivors with his dojutsu, and just now, dragged Deidara into a dream with his Mangekyo. Deidara wasn't an ordinary villager. Forcibly pulling him into a dream had cost an enormous amount of dojutsu. Shinji was still rough in constructing dreams. His use of eye techniques was more brute force than finesse. I have to find a way to get the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he resolved. Even with 2 pairs of Mangekyo at his command for now, and a little endurance left, it wouldn't be enough in the long run. The next day, he went to the Ninja Academy as usual. Despite the life-and-death events they'd been through, Haku and Karen were wary and distant, sitting in the same classroom but barely speaking all morning. Their furtive glances, however, didn't escape Shinji's notice. After the morning's academics, he asked Iruka for leave and walked alone to Konoha's archives. The clerk at the archives assumed he was there for a shadow-cloned scroll, so she was surprised when Shinji asked instead for the Uchiha clan family tree. After the massacre, everything that had belonged to the Uchiha had been seized by the village, including the family register that recorded their lineage across 1,000 years. Shinji had no real knowledge yet about the eternal Mangekyo, so he wanted to comb through the family tree for any clues. "A family tree, huh?" the administrator said, checking the inventory. Soon she brought out a thick volume and handed it to him. "Thank you." Shinji found a seat and turned the brittle pages, fingertips tracing names until he found his own, Uchiha Shinji. He followed the branch upward. Mother, Uchiha Emiko, unawakened. Father, Uchiha Kura, 3-tomo Sharingan, killed in the Third Shinobi World War, body destroyed. He let out a resigned breath. Of course, the direct bloodline is no help. Even so, he flipped another page. Grandfather, Uchiha Genichi, 3-tomoe. Grandmother, Uchiha, unawakened. The name made him stop. He read it again, Uchiha Chiri. At first it seemed like just another entry, but Shinji's stomach tightened. That name matched the woman from his memories, the female Mangekyo user who had developed the forbidden eye technique Izanami. The family tree gave little detail about Chiri, only a short note that she had joined the police force, and no mention of any Sharingan awakening. Typically, clan records only annotated members who had awakened the Sharingan. The absence of a note usually meant they hadn't. But the other facts were odd. Joining the police force without a ninja background, the identical name, and the match with the fragment of memory he had. He focused, recalling Chiri's Mangekyo pattern as best he could. It had been 3 petal-like shapes arranged in a triple-pronged formation. He glanced at his own pattern in his mind, 3 intertwined ink circles, also triple-pronged. The similarity sent a jolt through him. "There's no mistake," he whispered. "There's another Mangekyo in my bloodline, one that developed Izanami." He stood so abruptly, his chair scraped and tipped. The administrator looked over in alarm. "Is something the matter?" Shinji forced himself to calm down and shook his head. "I'm sorry. Seeing so many names of the dead made me emotional." "Be quieter. This is the archives," she warned, stern. He nodded, set the chair upright, closed the family tree carefully, returned it to her, and left as composed as he could manage. Once he was out of sight and certain no one was following, he slipped back to his apartment and tapped out the summoning sign in the bathroom. A puff of white smoke, and Kohlball popped his head through the portal and strolled out. Before the summon could speak, Shinji asked, breathless with urgency, "Did you see Uchiha Chiri's Sharingan in Root's secret vault last time?" Kohlball blinked, thinking it over. "I don't think so." "No?" He thought harder and became more certain. "No, I checked Danzo's collection when we were looking for Fugaku's Sharingan. There were 20 or 30 pairs in total, and I remember each jar. I don't recall any labeled Uchiha Chiri." Chapter 55. How did you come here? Third update. None? How could there be none? Shinji frowned. Then a thought struck him, and he clapped his hands. Of course, there were no names. Those that were marked had clearly been labeled by the medical team when they removed the Sharingan from the night of the massacre victims for identification. Uchiha Chiri belonged to the same era as the first and second generations and had long since died. Even if her Mangekyo Sharingan had been preserved by the clan, it wouldn't have been specifically labeled with a name. Realizing this, Shinji turned to Kohlball and asked, "Are there any Sharingan in Danzo's secret vault that aren't marked with names?" If the clan had truly preserved Uchiha Chiri's Mangekyo, This batch of priceless clan property would very likely have been confiscated by the village and ended up in Danzo's hands. Coalball didn't have to think long this time. He answered directly, "Yes, there are some jars that aren't marked." Shinji grabbed Coalball's sleeve, excited. "What kind of jars?" "What's with you?" Coalball raised an eyebrow, but answered seriously. "They look a bit old. The eyes inside might not be usable anymore." "Old," Shinji repeated. That confirmed his suspicion. The Uchiha had a habit of collecting Sharingan, evidence from Madara and from someone once advising Fugaku to retrieve Kakashi's eye. Those unmarked old jars could easily be Sharingan collected by the Uchiha themselves. At the same time, Shinji worried. As Coalball had said, after being soaked for so long, it was hard to know whether the eyes were still viable. Eyes are organs. Without the body's chakra nourishment, their functionality degrades. The entire Uchiha clan was obsessed with ocular techniques, but few of them focused on biotechnology or long-term preservation. Their methods wouldn't compare to Madara, who secretly researched first-generation cells, or to Orochimaru with his forbidden jutsu. "I have to get them as soon as possible," Shinji said after a pause, voice hardening. "Get them all." His goal wasn't just his grandmother's pair of manjikyo. Thinking of her led Shinji to a secret part of Uchiha history. After Madara left in a rage, the clan endured a brief internal conflict. Several surviving Uchiha elites from the Warring States period awakened Manjikyo Sharingan. With Madara gone and the headship unsettled, they refused to submit to one another, and a bloody struggle erupted. The forbidden jutsu Izanagi was abused during that time. To put an end to the strife, Uchiha Chiri painstakingly developed Izanami, the counter to Izanagi, and finally quelled the conflict. In other words, aside from Madara and Izuna, there had been other Uchiha elites who had awakened Mangekyo Sharingan. The first generation's brilliance overshadowed them, so they kept low, afraid to draw the first and second generation's attention. Even the family tree didn't record Chiri's awakening. Family trees aren't public, yet the Uchiha left no traces. That shows how wary they were of the first and second generations. Shinji suspected the second generation might have had some inkling of the Uchiha's concealment, and, fearing the clan's hidden strength, maintained a contradictory policy of flattery and suppression toward them. He even suspected the second generation had acted covertly against the Uchiha. That would explain Danzo. Danzo, a disciple of the second generation, had mastered Izanagi, a forbidden jutsu rarely learned inside the Uchiha, before the clan's destruction, and used it to ambush Shisui, breaking the balance of power between the village and the Uchiha. Where did Danzo get Izanagi? Judging from Shisui's reaction when he was attacked, he had no idea Danzo knew Izanagi. The Uchiha were unaware Danzo wielded Izanagi, so it was likely stolen. This mutual suspicion with the village convinced Shinji that those Uchiha elites might have preserved their mangekyos for contingencies. The old jars in Danzo's possession were probably full of Mangekyo Sharingan, and maybe more than one pair. "Oh no," Shinji thought suddenly, a chill running through him. "I stole Uchiha Fugaku's Mangekyo from Danzo last time. Will he get suspicious and search all the Sharingan?" A sense of urgency welled up in him. He had to seize the Sharingan in Danzo's hands quickly, or Danzo might discover what was hidden in them. Meanwhile, Itachi Uchiha, Juzo Biwa, and Sasori of the Red Sands slowly entered the main hall. Seeing Deidara inside, Sasori croaked. "Is this blonde kid the partner you arranged for me? He looks like he won't live long." With a clang, Biwa Juzo plunged his Kubikira Bocho into the floor, leaning on the blade as he laughed. "Don't underestimate him. He's on the wanted lists of several neighboring countries." Itachi stepped forward and said, "We're here to." Before he finished, Deidara absent-mindedly picked at his ear and snapped, "What took you so long? Why are you just arriving now?" Even Itachi, who rarely showed emotion, was slightly taken aback by the impatience. Deidara eyed the three newcomers and muttered to himself, "They look like rotten gourds. No wonder they're from the outer ranks, far worse than us inner-rank types." Biwa Juzo chuckled. "You know us?" "Akatsuki." Deidara spread his hand. "Where's my cloak and mask?" Sasori's voice dropped low. "You know we're here to recruit you?" Deidara shrugged. "Why else would you come?" Sasori, visibly annoyed, snapped, "Kid, watch your tone unless you want to die even sooner." Biwa Juzo laughed again. "This kid's interesting. He saved us a lot of trouble. Itachi, what do you think? Itachi didn't waste words. He tossed the prepared red cloud cloak to Deidara. Taking it, Deidara frowned in confusion. No mask? Author's note, this is the third update. I'm doing my best. Please follow along. This is very important. Don't hoard chapters. The more people who read as they appear, the better the chance of getting good recommendations. Please. Chapter 56, Survival in the Wild. The bell rang. Iruka walked into the classroom and announced, "Today, the Ninja Academy will hold an outdoor survival training exercise." Outdoor survival? Shinji, who'd been spacing out, frowned at the announcement. On the podium, Iruka continued, "This training will take place in the Death Forest on the edge of the village. Teachers will accompany you the whole time, so don't worry too much." Hands shot up. "Iruka-sensei, can we bring food? How about a grill? Can we bring pets? I want to wear my new clothes." The class erupted. With teachers coming along, everyone immediately treated survival training like a camping trip. Iruka pressed a hand to his forehead and tapped his desk. "Other classes will join this time. There'll be some competitive events, and losers will be punished." Tenten laughed. "Iruka-sensei, do you think our class will lose?" She glanced at Shinji and Neji, eyes bright with confidence. Iruka shook his head. "The outdoors is very different from what you imagine. If you go into a survival exercise thinking it's a picnic, you'll suffer. All right, you're dismissed. Go prepare and meet at the school at noon." The students poured out of the room. Shinji returned to his apartment and started counting his ninja tools. Something about this training set his nerves on edge. Just in case, he prepared meticulously. At the same time, his thoughts drifted, as always, toward Danzo and the Sharingan. The more he learned about the Susanoo lantern, the more certain he felt. If his Mangekyo Sharingan evolved into an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the lantern's power might increase with it. How can I make Danzo look away from the Sharingan? What does he want most right now? The answer felt obvious. Danzo's obsession was with the Sharingan. Everything from secretly studying the Uchiha's forbidden techniques to modifying his body and transplanting dozens of eyes showed that. Diverting his attention from the Sharingan would be nearly impossible. Shinji rubbed his chin. "Do I have to force my way in again?" He quickly dismissed the thought. In the original timeline, Danzo had once fought Sasuke, who had awakened the Mangekyo under the shadow of Obito's interference, and Danzo's strength had been considerable. If Obito hadn't been there to tip the balance, Sasuke might not have won. To handle the threat Obito represented, Danzo had kept Shisui's Mangekyo in reserve. If he'd used Kotoa Matsukami directly on Sasuke, it could have been devastating. Shinji admitted to himself that he wasn't remotely strong enough then. Danzo had the root base and loyal subordinates. If things escalated, other village forces would back him. Charging into a trap would be suicide. He forced his restlessness down. If there was any way, he'd try, but he wouldn't be reckless where it was clearly impossible. At noon, both classes gathered at the Ninja Academy and set out for the Death Forest. Shinji scanned the group and noticed that only 2 classes had been chosen, his own and Sasuke and Naruto's class. Naruto, discharged from the hospital, was there as well. Seeing him made Shinji's heart skip. Why are only our 2 classes going? Shinji wondered. Something felt off. Maybe because of the campus brawl yesterday, the 2 classes had mingled and gotten to know each other. Everyone chatted and laughed on the way, treating the whole thing as a field trip. Many shared snacks like it was an outing. Led by Iruka and Mizuki, they entered the Death Forest. "Wow! Look at that tree! I think I saw a snake over there." Many students were inside the forest for the first time and were distracted by its sights. Shinji had been there once before, so nothing surprised him. Sasuke had been startled at first too, but seeing Shinji's calm face, he quickly composed himself. Neji activated his Byakugan and scanned their surroundings. After walking a kilometer or 2, Iruka said, "Okay, let's camp here." Everyone sprang into action. Tents went up, grills were set out, and people scoured the area for firewood. Iruka kept up a steady stream of reminders. Stay close by and don't go deep into the forest alone. Got it. Shinji moved over to Neji. Did you notice anything? Neji blinked, surprised that Shinji had spoken to him, then shook his head. With this many people, wild beasts are avoiding us. Be careful, Shinji said. Neji didn't understand why Shinji was so wary with teachers around, but he nodded anyway. Sasuke, nearby, pretended not to listen, but leaned in subconsciously, trying to catch their words. Haku and Karin teamed up to set up a tent. Naruto, Kiba, and Lee noisily gathered wood. Shikamaru and Choji handled the grill. Sakura, Hinata, and Ino clustered around a captured wild rabbit. Iruka watched these scenes and sighed. He leaped down and landed beside Mizuki, who had been keeping watch from a tree. "Looks like this survival training is turning into a camping trip," he said helplessly. Mizuki chuckled. "The kids need to relax." Iruka still looked worried. "This is the Death Forest. I'm concerned about accidents." "Don't worry. We're here." Mizuki paused, then added casually, "Besides, the Anbu assigned to protect Sasuke came along." Before Iruka could reply, a muffled thud cut through the air. Everyone turned toward the sound and saw an Anbu fall from the sky, crashing to the ground nearby, his life uncertain. The Anbu, who had fallen from the sky, lay motionless, and the sight sent the students into an immediate panic. Iruka and Mizuki moved at once, one keeping watch while the other crouched to check the fallen Anbu. Then a figure emerged slowly from the tree line. Mizuki barked, "Who's there?" Before he could finish, the figure, which had been dozens of meters away a heartbeat ago, was suddenly standing right in front of him. "You!" The stranger's foot snapped out. Mizuki, a Chunin, had no time to react. He was launched into a tree with a sickening crack and slid down to the ground, unconscious. Iruka, who had been crouched over the Anbu, froze, then shouted to the students behind him, "Run!" He drew a kunai and took a defensive stance. A body flicker technique like that was beyond a Chunin. All he could do was try to delay the attacker long enough for the others to get away. But the man only flicked his hand, a simple chop, and Iruka went rigid and collapsed. How is this possible?" someone stammered. "They're teachers." The students were rooted to the spot. After dispatching Mizuki and Iruka with icy ease, the stranger walked toward them. Shinji's face went cold. Could it be Orochimaru? The man's face was wrapped in bandages, but his obsessive stare fixed on Sasuke and the way he stuck his tongue out made Shinji suspicious. Sasuke, however, stepped forward and shouted to Shinji and Neji, "Perfect, we'll have another match." Shinji thought, "You've got guts." Neji's Byakugan rolled open, his expression hardened. "Don't be reckless. His chakra, it's more than 10 times that of any Jonin I've seen." "What?" Sasuke's eyes widened. Shinji's suspicion solidified. That much chakra suggested at least Kage-level power. The newcomer was not an ordinary enemy. The man licked his lips and, in a hoarse voice, asked Sasuke, "Are you the brat who tamed the Nine Tails?" Sasuke activated his Sharingan and stared back. "If you're looking for trouble, you picked the wrong person." The man laughed slowly. Instantly, an oppressive wave of chakra and killing intent pulsed outward from him. Its pressure made many of the students slump to the ground in shock. Sasuke and Neji felt a heavy weight settle on them, as if their bodies were glued in place. Only Shinji resisted the aura's full effect, though even he was shaken. This presence was unlike any shinobi he had seen. Chakra, malice, and something else, all on a level far beyond normal. The stranger moved closer, eyes fixed on the twin Tomoe in Sasuke's Sharingan, hungry fascination in his gaze. Realizing the danger, Sasuke bit his tongue hard and used the pain to wrench himself free from the oppressive presence. "Idiot, get out of here!" he shouted toward Naruto, who was nearby. Shinji spun and yelled at Haku, "Take everyone and go!" Haku hesitated, then obeyed and began organizing the retreat. The stranger didn't try to stop them. He watched Sasuke and Shinji with a playful smirk. Shinji's fear hardened into understanding. Orochimaru must have smelled news of Sasuke's Sharingan, and, after possibly suffering a setback against Itachi, his interest in the Sharingan would be obsessive. That meant the two surviving Uchiha remnants, Shinji and Sasuke, were likely his targets. Soon the students had scattered, leaving only Shinji, Sasuke, and Neji facing the man. Running was pointless. The stranger had come for them. But pride wouldn't let Sasuke and Neji flee. The man inclined his head. "Still daring to stand before me? You three are amusing. Make a big enough commotion and the village will notice," Shinji said quickly. "You two cover me." Sasuke and Neji's eyes flashed. Shinji spun, throwing several kunai and beginning hand seals. The stranger barely flinched, smiling, tilting his head as he casually avoided the blades. But his smile faltered when he realized those kunai had hidden steel wires attached. each wire connected to an explosive tag, sparks crawling along their fuses. Boom, boom, the explosives detonated around him in a ring. The man sprang up out of the smoke, vaulting high into the treetops. Fire release, great fireball technique. Shinji completed his hand signs and loosed a titanic blast directly into the canopy above the explosions. The fireball lit the forest like day and caught the man as he landed on a branch. The blaze was far more immense than any great fireball technique the others had seen, powerful enough to set the treetops alight and send thick smoke rolling up into the sky. Shinji didn't wait to see the result. His plan had never been to kill the attacker, but to create a visible signal. As the smoke climbed, he grabbed Sasuke and Neji by the collars and hauled them along. "Stop standing there! Run!" From the smoke, the bandaged figure walked out, licking his tongue and watching the direction they'd fled. "How interesting," he said. Chapter 58. Don't worry about the rest. Third update. "Why are we running? Didn't your ninjutsu hit him?" Sasuke sounded more confused than angry, but underneath that frustration was wounded pride. Every time he faced this mysterious opponent, his sense of superiority, built on feats like awakening the Sharingan at 7, subduing the Ninetales, and saving the village, crumbled. Shinji, who was running ahead, ignored him. He couldn't risk showing the Mangekyo Sharingan. If the village discovered his previous incursions into the Anbu and root bases, he'd either be hunted down or forced to defect. And if he defected, getting the Uchiha clan's Sharingan back from Danzo would be that much harder. "They're catching up," Neji said suddenly. "What?" Sasuke blurted. "That kind of fire release, and it still didn't kill him?" Shinji thumbed through the remaining ninja tools in his pouch, thinking fast. "We can't just keep running. We need to set an ambush." Sasuke and Neji both nodded. Their speed couldn't match this opponent's. If they kept fleeing, they'd be overtaken. Better to find a place to prepare, and even the odds. A whoosh from above announced the mysterious man's descent. The earlier great fireball had apparently done nothing to him. He landed calm, smiling as always. He followed the footprints into the tall grass, then stopped just before stepping in. From the grass, Sasuke silently screamed at him, "Step in! Hurry!" Shinji knew the trap had been seen and acted without hesitation. He slashed the steel wire at his feet. Thud, thud. Wires cut and snapped, a chain reaction pulling the prearranged cables into the air. They tangled into a huge steel net that dropped over the mysterious man. As the net fell, other wires reeled in, dragging out strings of exploding tags that wrapped the man from every angle. Boom, boom, boom. The explosion detonated with vicious force. Before Neji could confirm with Byakugan, Sasuke climbed out of the grass and shouted, "We got him!" A gust of wind hit from behind. Sasuke spun, Sharingan flaring, and threw an elbow, only to miss. Pain exploded in his midsection. A kick sent him crashing into a tree. The mysterious man turned his head from Sasuke to Shinji and chuckled, "You can pull off all this without a Mangekyo?" Shinji's frown deepened. He'd used every advantage his thread manipulation and tool throwing offered, but without the Mangekyo, there was a flaw the enemy could exploit. Body flicker technique, simple brute speed and absolute strength, had beaten the ambush. Sasuke clutched his stomach and tried to push himself up. The mysterious man was already on him. In a blink, he was in front of Sasuke. Another brutal blow sent the boy spitting blood and curling on the ground. At 7, even with his Sharingan, Sasuke felt like a child before this man. "He's too strong," Neji warned. "We go together." Shinji counted his remaining gear and charged with Neji. The mysterious man barely moved, only glancing back with that irritating, almost playful expression. Neji wasted no probes. He unleashed his strongest gentle fist, the 8 trigrams 32 palms. The man simply parried with his right hand, breaking Neji's rhythm, then struck his lung. Neji gasped and collapsed. Shinji avoided close quarters. He threw several kunai, their ends tied to steel wire and exploding tags, then slipped into the grass before the mysterious man could respond. The man sprang up and landed on a large tree, expecting the explosives to go off. They didn't. From the grass, 2 more kunai shot out and collided with the first ones, changing their trajectory. The swapped kunai threaded through gaps behind Sasuke and Neji, and, with wires trailing, lassoed their legs. With a pair of quick tugs, the wires pulled both boys into the grass together. The man on the tree let an eerie smile curl his lips. Shinji finished setting the remaining wires and exploding tags, then hoisted Sasuke and Neji onto his shoulders and ran. He knew his taijutsu wasn't superior to the mysterious man's. If he engaged in close combat, he'd be beaten in a few moves. So he kept fleeing, putting as much distance as he could while the traps bought them time. After a while, Neji struggled. "Put me down, I can walk." "I can walk too," Sasuke insisted. Shinji set them both down and breathed hard. He had pushed his breathing method to its limit to escape earlier. His lungs burned. As Neji reached to activate his Byakugan, a figure dropped from the sky and slammed into him, knocking him unconscious. Another figure landed and knocked Sasuke out. Shinji leaped back, on guard. The two attackers wore the black uniforms of Root Ninja. Danzo too? Shinji's mind raced. He'd suspected Oromaru's hand in this, but Danzo's involvement changed things. If Danzo's men captured him and brought him back to the Root base, that might be the easiest way in, no infiltration required. The incident had already erupted in public. The third Hokage would inevitably be drawn in, and Danzo would have to focus on him. If Shinji were taken to Root's lair, he could use the chance to reclaim the Sharingan Danzo hoarded. When the Root Ninja advanced, Shinji pretended to be unconscious, taking a delivered blow and collapsing. He lay still, grinning inwardly. This was the plan. Perfect. Let them carry him to Danzo's vault. He overheard the men as they prepared to move the captives. "Take Uchiha Sasuke back," one said. The other, looking at Shinji and Neji, asked, "What about the other two?" "Don't worry about the rest." Shinji froze, his mind blank with disbelief. "What? The third update is delivered. I've been typing all day without stopping and put out 3 updates in a row. Please give recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, and keep reading. Thank you, everyone." Chapter 59. Why don't you take me? "What the hell? I'm an Uchiha too. Why didn't you take me?" Shinji fumed. He was already imagining himself storming into Danzo's secret vault and carrying off every last Sharingan. He never expected the two Root Nin to ignore him. How outrageous. Just then, Sasuke, tucked under the arm of one of the Root operatives, suddenly stirred and snapped awake. "Who are you?" The two Root Ninjas froze, surprised. Although Sasuke's newly awakened two Tomoe Sharingan hadn't let him completely dodge the earlier grab, he'd sensed it enough to adjust his body and prevent them from hitting any vital spots. And since their orders had been to take him alive, the attack hadn't been that brutal. Sasuke had been able to come to quickly. Seeing Sasuke wake, Shinji pretended to stir as well, pushed himself up, and yelled, "Stop! I won't let you take Sasuke!" The two Root Ninjas exchanged looks. One of them understood in an instant and lunged, delivering a sharp chop to Shinji. He went down with a thud. "Done! Let's go!" They turned to leave, but as one took a step, his ankle was grabbed. He looked back to see Shinji back on his feet and clutching at him. "Let go of Sasuke!" "You brat!" The man scowled. The other Root, still holding Sasuke, glared and shouted, "Shinji!" Then he struck. Another hard chop. Shinji crumpled again. This time, the Root with Sasuke didn't hurry away. He watched Shinji on the ground a full second before turning to his partner. "These Uchiha kids are a real pain." Sasuke struggled where he was held. "What did you do to Shinji? Let me go." But the Root holding him didn't hesitate. He landed 2 heavy punches. Sasuke, after taking both blows, felt sick and too weak to fight. The pair prepared to leave when that infuriating voice spoke up once more. "Let go of Sasuke, or I won't give up." They looked back at Shinji, once again on his feet, and scowled. Sasuke sniffled, moved by the defiance. "Shinji, don't worry about me." Shinji had taken a few hits, but he grimly refused to back down. If they didn't take him along, he'd be left out. Outrageous. "Won't give up, huh?" One Root sneered, then decided, "Fine, we'll take you too." They seized Shinji and marched off with both Uchiha in custody. Not long after, an ambush squad followed the trail and arrived to find Neji unconscious in the clearing. After waking him, an ambu in a dog mask demanded, "Who attacked you? Do you know where Uchiha Sasuke is?" Neji shook his head. "I didn't get a good look at them." "Us?" The dog-masked ambu pressed. "Who else was with you?" Neji realized immediately. Shinji and Sasuke were gone. He told them about the strange pursuer and how the 3 of them had been chased. Another ambu landed beside them. All the other kids have been found. So only the 2 missing Uchiha remain. The dog-masked ambu let out a quiet sigh. "Report to the Hokage." Deep under the root base, Shinji took note of the familiar spiral staircase leading down. Compared to his last visit, the base had been remodeled, reinforcements everywhere, a more complex stair layout, and several tunnels he didn't remember. This place had been rebuilt. Shinji and Sasuke were thrown into adjacent cells at the bottom. The root removed all their tools and bound their hands and feet in heavy steel chains. Don't even think about escaping. Stay put and be obedient. After a final warning, the two root operatives left. Through the thin wall between cells, Sasuke whispered, "Shinji, I'm sorry, I got you into trouble." Shinji was already planning their next move and waved him off. "We're the last of the Uchiha, don't say that." Sasuke fell quiet. Shinji's words brought back the image of the night of the massacre and the person Sasuke had sworn to kill. Shinji inspected his cell. There were no obvious surveillance devices. This looked like a temporary holding area, not a high-security prison. He strained against the chains, but they didn't budge. The root must have thought of everything. 2 kids, no tools. Breaking those chains was impossible. He sat down and tried to work out the time. It had been over an hour since the attack. The death forest sat right next to the village. Even if the Leaf's reaction was slow, someone should have noticed the disturbance and begun searching. Sasuke was a high-priority subject. His disappearance would force the third Hokage's direct involvement. If the Hokage wasn't otherwise occupied, negotiations with Danzo should be underway. Half an hour at most, Shinji told himself. I don't have much time. He made up his mind. Shinji formed hand signs and activated the shadow clone technique, creating a decoy. Then he bit his finger and summoned Coalball. "What's going on?" Coalball cried, appearing bewildered and trying to bolt, until the shadow clone grabbed him. Shinji muttered, annoyed. "Child of the night? Moonlight spirit? Shadow dominator? Famous in the ninja world with these names? Is this all you've got?" Coalball cowered. "I was going back to get reinforcements." There was no time for bickering. Shinji explained the plan at a run and then gave a single order. "Listen, this time you must take every Sharingan you can find." Coalball hesitated. "There are so many. How can I carry them all?" "Don't you have any sealing scrolls?" Shinji asked. "Of course," Coalball answered, "but they're mostly filled with weapons and tools. They're valuable." Shinji waved him off. "I'll cover the loss. Just take as many Sharingan as you can." Coalball's eyes lit up. Following Shinji's instructions, he melted into the shadows, slipped out past the cells, opened the door from the outside, and set off with Shinji's shadow clone as cover. Seeing his clone and Coalball disappear into the tunnels, Shinji summoned again and brought forth his second summoned ninja cat. Coalball and the clone weren't enough. Shinji would need to create more chaos to hide Coalball's movements. Chapter 60. Move. Huh? Fuki, the Jaime, stepped out of a swirl of white smoke and looked around the dark prison cell with obvious disdain. She tiptoed and then jumped up onto Shinji's shoulder, careful not to let the white fur on her body touch the filthy floor. Shinji held out his chained hands. "Quick, use wind release to cut these chains." When it came to cutting, wind release was unrivaled. High-level wind release could even pierce Suzanu's defenses. Fuki, however, looked annoyed. "You summoned me just to do this dirty work?" Shinji knew the white cat was a little tsundere, so he played along. "This is life or death. You don't want me to die with only a single-digit lifespan, do you?" Fuki's nose tilted up. "Fine, I'll save you." She formed hand signs quickly and shouted at the chains binding Shinji's hands. Wind release, violent wave, whoosh. A blade of wind shot from her mouth toward the chains. It struck with a ringing clang, then vanished, leaving the chains intact. Shinji didn't say anything. He just gave Fuki a look that clearly said, "Can you do it?" Fuki's fur immediately bristled. She formed hand signs again, gathered chakra into her claws, and leapt at the chains with a fierce pounce. Wind release, cat's cut! Clang! A high-pitched screech split the air and the chains snapped. Shinji's eyes sparkled. After freeing his leg chains, he had Fuki target the cell door with wind release so it would look like an internal breakout. Then he rushed to Sasuke's cell and opened it. Sasuke looked up, puzzled. "Shinji, you—" Shinji didn't stop to explain. "Quick, cut his chains too." "So troublesome," Fuki complained, but her claws were nimble. In a few quick slashes, she severed the chains binding Sasuke. Sasuke watched the white cat, whom he had not been able to break free from even with all his strength cut his bonds. His eyes widened. "Is this cat your summoned creature? Were you talking to her in the other cell?" "Yes. No time to talk. Let's get out," Shinji said, pulling Sasuke along. As they fled, Sasuke kept glancing at the white cat on Shinji's shoulder. He hadn't expected Shinji to be so well-rounded, stronger in ninjutsu, taijutsu, and weapon throwing, and even with a summoned beast before graduating the academy. Panic pricked at him. If Shinji was catching up to him in every skill, then Sasuke's only real advantage, the Sharingan, might be neutralized. He worried he'd be left behind completely. Shinji didn't know what Sasuke was thinking. He was calculating timing. In the original timeline, the third Hokage had personally led Anzo's root base to reclaim Yamato, who had mastered wood release. The third could arrive at any moment. Shinji had to create a distraction to give the shadow clone and the coal ball he'd planted on the other side a chance to act. So he deliberately led Sasuke past an alarm he had found. Beep, beep, beep. An instant later, shrill alarms screamed through the root base. Sasuke's face went pale. "Oh no." Shinji's expression stayed calm. "If we run into enemies, I'll hold them off. You get away and find the Hokage. Tell them to come save me." Sasuke hesitated, then nodded. He knew Shinji's plan was the best shot. If they both tried to hold the enemies, neither might escape. Soon several root ninja cut them off. "Kids, how did you get out? Was that a ninja cat?" "Careless. We should have sealed it." They saw Fuki on Shinji's shoulder and guessed how he'd escaped. Their faces hardened. Danzo punished carelessness harshly. As the root operatives closed in, Shinji stepped forward. "You go. I'll hold them." Sasuke's eyes glistened. "Don't worry. I'll come back for you." Shinji felt guilty and couldn't look back. The way he stepped aside hid the path that led to Danzo's secret vault. Sasuke fled toward that vault, but kept glancing back. Seeing Shinji's determined back, his eyes grew wet. "Damn it. Why can't I ever do more?" The root ninja focused on chasing Sasuke. Before they could press the advantage, Shinji called to Fuki. "You use wind release. I'll use fire release." Fuki made a face. "Be careful. Burn my fur and I'll terminate our contract." It was their first real cooperation, but their synergy was excellent. Shinji finished his hand signs. Fire release. Great fireball technique. On his shoulder, Fuki released her jutsu as soon as the fireball was launched. Wind release. Great violent wave. Boom! The wind fused with the fire, and Shinji's great fireball instantly swelled to more than double its size, nearly filling the entire tunnel. The root ninjas stared in disbelief. They'd seen strong fire techniques before, but never expected such power from an 8-year-old academy student. Realizing they couldn't stand against it, they abandoned their pursuit of Sasuke and scattered. Danzo's root base was essentially a deep circular pit, a giant chimney. The funnel-like structure intensified the fire, and Shinji's fireball burned with increasing ferocity, swelling into a massive blaze. Boom, boom, explosions rattled through the base, making the blaring alarms seem insignificant in comparison. No one had expected a single jutsu to cause such havoc. Even Shinji, the caster, exchanged stunned looks with the root operatives. Swish, swish, swish. Figures landed on the spiral stairwell. Shinji looked up and saw the third Hokage at the front, draped in the Hokage robe and flanked by a force of Anbu. Behind them, Danzo scowled, his face grim. He glared at Shinji and demanded, "Where is Uchiha Sasuke?" A root ninja stepped forward and pointed toward the secret vault. "Sir, Uchiha Sasuke escaped in that direction." Boom! An explosion drowned out the ninja's report, and it came from the exact direction he'd pointed, the secret vault. Second update delivered? Please vote with recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, and continue reading.